the difference between someone who could be a wounded healer and someone who's just wounded is that they've converted that wound into a sacred wound.
Yes.
And now that wound has informed their existence, their being. And they're able now to bring that wisdom that comes from the depth of pain, right? The depth of
Mhm.
suffering, and create a nobility from it.
It starts right here. Start right here.
Welcome to Start Right Here. I'm Tom Rutledge, and with me is the good Dr. Alan Berger. How you doing, Alan?
I can't tell you how excited I am. We are living a historical moment in our life with this.
Yep. I told a friend of mine, I said, hey, we have another historical moment to add to the old codger's list of things we remember that are just history, man. And it's been very different than I even anticipated. But it's been beautiful.
It's been amazing. I was flying out here. I'm in North Carolina as we're filming this show today and recording this show. And I went through Atlanta, and literally people dancing in the airport in Atlanta.
Yep.
I mean, the joy, the celebration has just been so touching to me. And it happened in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And I was telling you, this son of this couple reached out to me about and to get together with his mom and dad for a 44th anniversary present surprise.
Mm-hmm.
And, I said to them, isn't it something that freedom ring again from Philadelphia?
I know it.
Freedom ring again.
It's amazing.
It's renewed my faith in our democratic process and in our country and everything. I mean,
I have a friend, Araya Mountain Dreamer is the name she was writing under back in the. She wrote The Invitation and a lot of other cool books, but she was my pen pal through 9/11. If I hadn't had the Canadian friend to correspond with, I don't know that I would have made it through 9/11. It's like. But she said to me when now, and I'm not trying to get us off on some kind of rant thing here, but she did say when Donald Trump was elected, she just sent me an email that said, now we're going to find out if your democratic system works, and it's and we did. And the lesson I have been saying to everybody and writing everywhere I can on the walls, anything, is the lesson is it's the exact same lesson we have in this podcast. It's present moment, stay alert, keep working. When something's working, you don't let up. What happened? We dozed off. We are a sleepy bunch, human beings. We fall asleep. We wake up at crisis. We do beautiful things, and then we fall back asleep. And it's like in this particular case, what we need to do is realize that it's so tempting just to go, oh, thank God, everything's back to normal again. Go like, no, it's like this stuff can happen again, and we have a long way to go in terms of. Repairing and healing is the thing that Joe Biden talked about in his speech that I want to be sure that we talk about some today.
Well, that's what we're going to do. We were going to talk about, and we promised everybody that we get into talking about not taking things personally and how to deal with that. And we're going to put that off because of this moment.
Mm-hmm.
Really honor this very, very sacred moment in our history.
Mm-hmm.
And let's talk about healing, because there's going to be a lot of focus on this in the days and moments and years to come. And you were going to read something that
yeah, I'd made some notes. I tell you, I did my favorite thing, which was about the part of me that does this work always shows up at the last minute. So I know enough to go like about an hour before we sat down to do this. Took my dog and we went out into the woods and I have chairs, various places in the woods behind my house, and sat and just took some index cards and just scribbled some notes down, and just tried to think about what I wanted to talk about this stuff. And the thing that, well, one of the things I'll tell you, Ari Flesher, what he was he was on Twitter this morning. I responded to one of his tweets. What position was he with Bush? Ari Flesher.
I thought he might have been in the Obama administration, but
he may have been in that. It's like but one of the things he said, maybe because of his tweet kind of made me think that, is that he said something about now we're talking about healing. It's like, before we were talking about resistance and and all this pushing back. And he says, where were these people, before? And what I wrote back to him, or just tweeted, I didn't write to him specifically, was, you can't heal during the assault. While you're being assaulted, you don't heal. You defend. You try to stay safe. You duck and cover. And it's like, and that's the relief thing I think we're finding. And when we have somebody like Joe Biden and Kamala Harris step up and it's to me it's a very parental message. No, we're gonna heal. We're not gonna retaliate. We're not gonna do this or that. And it's like, what I wrote down was just thinking back on what I know about Joe Biden is, we talk in our business a lot, Alan, about wounded healers. We to various degrees, we all consider ourselves wounded healers in the sense that we are, we draw from our own experience of pain to help other people. Joe Biden is a wounded healer. The day that he was elected to the Senate when he was 29 years old, his wife and daughter died in a car accident, and his two boys were hanging on. And it's like, I didn't know about his aneurysms until the surgeries he had for these two aneurysms at one point. That one of them, I think, burst during the operations, but he's dealt with a lot of stuff, and it's like, it really shows. And he's, and I love the idea that he comes from, I guess maybe this is my ego. I like that he comes from the experience like we do, where he draws on his own experience to help other people. But I think that makes him really credible as with that message.
Oh, and let me just make a correction that Ari Flesher was the press secretary during George W. Bush's administration.
All right. I was almost right.
You were there.
I feel so good about myself. It's but at any rate, one of the main thing ultimately what I ended up writing down on this index card was anybody can agree that healing is a good idea, but to me, it felt like, wait a minute, this is the kind of thing that I think therapists in the world, any version of professional people helpers, we need to be ready. We need to be out here, and I'm glad we have this podcast now to do this too. Is to say we need to get the conversation going and keep it going about how to do that, because saying it is one thing, doing it's a whole different matter.
Yeah, when you were talking about wounded healers and what you said about President-elect Joe Biden, I think it is so powerful. And let's just go on a side for just 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
You see, I think when you take a wound and you work with it, which he did,
Mm-hmm.
see, if the difference between someone who could be a wounded healer and someone who's just wounded is that they've converted that wound into a sacred wound.
Yes.
And now that wound has informed their existence, their being. And they're able now to bring that wisdom that comes from the depth of pain, right? The depth of suffering, and create a nobility from it. I mean, and that's what we see in Joe Biden. Just his whole attitude, even through the many days that we sat here with this electoral process unfolding at a snail's pace, right?
Right.
I've never experienced that kind of a slow, movement towards the final decision. His attitude was wonderful through it all. He was always coming in and let's be patient. Let's take this moment. Let's just let it unfold. Let it be what it's going to be. And always with a thing of towards healing, towards uniting.
Right, and it's being in the present moment too. The idea of it's not like I think about how many times in my life, that I have been too future oriented, so that I'm trying to get ready to do something. He's not trying to get ready to lead. He was leading.
He was leading.
Yeah,
that's right. He was definitely leading. He was being presidential.
Mm-hmm.
Really was in that moment. You could see it, which was so soothing for me and comforting, is for him to be taking that position. It's like I was able to finally let out this big sigh that it's almost like I held my breath for 4 years.
I've heard so many people talk about breath since that was the first thing I put out was I think the thing I sent to you and Patrick was I can finally breathe again. Can I have this dance? It's like, because not only do I want to breathe, I wanted, like you were saying in Atlanta airport dancing. Our friend Carol Carter, our common friend Carol Carter, she sent me a video of Joan Baez in the grocery store leading the people. She was just dancing, but other people were coming up to her, and so she was leading people in this dance through the grocery store, and it's like, it's Joan Baez, it's like,
isn't that great?
That's amazing.
Oh, great. No, it's very, very important moment in our lives.
Yeah, and not to mention what it means in terms of misogyny and chauvinism and racism and everything else, to have Kamala Harris on this ticket and talk about an amazing leader. I believe that she is, from what I've seen, is an amazing prosecutor. From what I've seen her interview people from that Senate seat.
Well, my wife said, what a time for us to be raising two daughters when they can see Kamala being in the position she is. I mean, she goes, Jess was very excited.
Yeah. And Kamala talked about that too, about just, she's so, I love that. They're so aware of what they represent.
Yes.
To be, it's like it's just, you were talking about this couple, this fellow that asked you to speak to his parents on their anniversary because I don't know if both of them were, but I think you said the mom was a big fan of yours, a reader.
Dad turned out to be too. I didn't know that.
Good. Well, we're guys. We got to be cool.
That's right.
I can't be seen going like, oh my God, it's Alan Berger. But the idea of that, one of the things I've learned though, it's always interesting when you realize that's always a weird thing about this business. When somebody you don't even know knows who you are and knows what you do or knows something about you. But the thing I've learned through the years from people who are, who are in this business ahead of me and have taught me is that's so important to honor. If you represent, I don't care if it's on a smaller scale or if it's, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, if you represent something for a greater number of people, it's like, and I'm not talking about codependency. That means you have to give yourself away to that, but it's like, you really do need to honor that and respect that, because it's too easy. I think it's too easy, certainly from somebody who comes from a place of putting myself down, is to minimize it. And, oh, don't worry, it's just me. Don't worry, that kind of stuff. It's like, no, it's like, we've all had people that have made a difference in our lives, in big and small ways. And it's like, that's one of the things that's been missing is we don't have people to look up to.
Yeah.
So we do now. We do. That's part of the healing.
That's right. Good point.
We have a model.
Yep.
Sometimes I can, kind of maybe not be such a smart ass if I feel like being one, but if I'm talking to somebody who's of different opinions of mine, that I go like, okay, no, I need to, I believe what they're saying about we need to be healing. So I need to be thinking about. I say we want to teach people how to do it. It's like, I'm not claiming I know exactly how to apply what we know about healing to this situation, but I really look forward to you and I working that out as we go through this.
So did you put a note down to how President-elect Biden talked about the healing?
I mean, what I put there was we need to, you know, that's where I kind of got off into our stuff, where I started thinking like, so what, first thing that comes to my mind is that, you know, it happens first with communication. It's like we have with respect and communication, and actually we said we're kind of putting this topic off, and we'll do it again next week. But you said something just before we went on the air with this today, that this really is about not taking, you know, learning how not to take things personally. And it's like, and I think that's important to say, that doesn't mean that you don't have an opinion about what somebody else thinks. It doesn't mean that you agree with, or that not taking something personally doesn't mean, you know, everything's fine. I have no problem with that. What it means is, it really is a very important thing about, it's a technique, it's a strategy, it's a way of communicating. I'm going to, that's an appropriate defense. I'm not going to let that hit me at a place that's going to personally offend me, so that I'm not capable of communicating. You know, that's what we learn in our marriages. When we finally figure out how to do that, is to say that, you know, we don't say, well, I'm going to stop caring what my wife thinks. You know, that won't do it. But I did have to find a way so that basically, you know, I didn't either, you know, come back with full defenses on or crumble. You know, and I needed to be able to stand as an adult. And I think that's what healing means largely, is being an adult.
Well, see, I thought that his position through this whole process has been to, first of all, not apologize for being a Democrat. I love how he does that.
I'm a proud Democrat, and I'm
I'm a Democrat. I'm proud of being a Democrat. I'm proud of the position I stand for in the Democratic, you know, committees, or in a Democratic spirit. He says, but I'm going to be a president to reside over all Americans. I'm not just here to represent one need, one party. I am going to be a president of the American people. And see, that part, one, he brought together the differences and said, okay, we have these differences, but I'm going to stand in the middle of this, and I'm going to govern for all of us.
Great.
I'm going to try to make this America to be what it can be for all of us, not just some of us, but for all of us. That's the part that, to me, started the healing.
You know, that's beautiful, because it also connects right back to our work. Because that one of the things that I talk about throughout the therapy for politics thing that I've written is just that basically the position of the therapist in this case, or in this case of Joe Biden, is I'm going to pan back far enough to be able to see more than just one perspective. Yes. You know, one of the things I'll say to my clients a lot of times, because I'm in my little chair with rollers on it, when you know, back in the days when we saw people in the room, it's like, I'll say, I have the advantage of having rollers on my chair. So I say, I could roll over here to your side. I can roll over here to your side. And here's the thing, I'm just now saying to myself, I'm having this meeting in my head where that tough, loving voice of me is saying, okay, Tom, your challenge is to apply what you've been teaching other people and what you've learned to do in your own relationship to this circumstance. And that's not going to be easy, because a lot of times I don't have such a high opinion of somebody else's position. But what I tell people is like that, in order to have a solid communication, an effective communication, you have to be able to respect what somebody's saying, even if you disagree. Respect in that case just means I understand. It really is ultimately, I understand you're not me, you know, and you don't have to think like me.
That's right.
You know, it's like, and the idea is, if we can also take every conversation out of being a debate, an argument, or right or wrong, but become more about what we do as therapists. What do? We become curious. It's like, not like, and now see if I can be a smart ass, I can say, I'm curious about how that person got to be so stupid. It's like, no, not the way to do it. I'm curious.
That might start a different fight.
That's right. Hey, Alan, I'm curious about how far your head is up your ass and how long it's been there. It's like, no, not that. But the idea is that there is. I'm going to have to remember and come back with the name of the book. There was a fellow who wrote about
cranial inversion. Is that?
Let me write that down. It's like, I don't know, but it's interesting when you come from the point of view of respecting that other people. If you're going to make an assumption, let's make an assumption that other people are, for the most part, decent people. Okay, because it's easy to forget that, and obviously, and when I hear people talking about me on the other side of that divide, is they'll see me as something that I'm not. And so what I want to say is, okay, well, let's start with the idea that we probably both misunderstand one another. Yeah. And and then maybe I could learn more about that. Maybe I could learn more about what it is you care about so much.
Well, it's funny you say that, because as we were leading up to the election date, I think it was CNN was going into these rural communities and interviewing people and getting a sense of how they were voting and how they were thinking about it. And when I looked at especially, I loved how they would zoom in on a state and be able to look at the different counties that were going red or blue and what the essence of it was. Like Pennsylvania is a great example of that, right?
Right.
So you see your real metropolitan areas are Democratic, strongly Democratic, right? And even all of the areas surrounding what they would call, I guess, the suburbs, very much. And then the farther you get away, the redder the state becomes.
Yeah.
And it's to me, and I know this is not an absolute, but they were interviewing this one family, and they were talking about masks. And the whole issue for them was, first of all, the coronavirus issue doesn't have the same reality out there as it does over here. Meaning, if you're living in a city, we're so close together, the contagion spreads so quickly. I mean, things like that, like what we saw in New York. I mean, my God, what happened to the poor New Yorkers in the beginning of this thing? Right. It was like the first strike, hit New York. It was terrible. And but their issue was around the mask thing, went back to the Declaration of Independence. All they're saying, it doesn't matter whether it would be Trump or anyone else. They weren't pitting this on Trump. They were saying, we don't want to be told what to do. That we have this freedom from based on our constitutional rights to do what we want to do and to be the determining force in our own lives. And they were standing on this principle that had nothing to do with, for them, politics. It had to do with the right that they have as being an American citizen. And it was and I'm sure that's not true for all of them. I'm not putting
No, it's a good example though.
But it was a very interesting thing, because I could see that. And while I think that's important too, for me, it's also important how we affect each other. And I don't have to lose myself in order to keep my autonomy, so to speak, my independence. I can cooperate and not lose it. Like when I put a seatbelt on, I don't feel like the government's controlling me. I want to put that seatbelt on because I know I'm safer in the vehicle if I have that on.
Right.
But that takes a certain kind of a consciousness to think about things that way.
Alan, that's a perfect example, I think, of for us to talk about how to listen for people at a different level, or listening at a values level. It's like now, see, because then I can immediately put myself in that situation. And this is one of the things that we'll talk about as we go through this too, in terms of the how to do the healing is one of the things I've had to learn about for myself, and have taught a lot of people about, is how to slow my intrapersonal process down, because I'm a ping pong ball thinker. It's like, so I immediately had this, I imagined somebody tells me that, which I've heard people say that before. And I can immediately go to the place. Well, let's again talk about how far your head is up your ass. It's like, and go like, wait a minute. If I do this better, if I do this, if I look at my side of the street, it's not saying I'm wrong. They're, instead of them, it's saying, if I listen to the way you said it that's the value. If I slow it down, I absolutely, like you, can identify with that value. Because right. Well, and I think you and I are probably pretty much on that end of the continuum of if somebody says, how many of you in this room like people to tell you what to do? It's like, our hands are not going up. It's if they play a values clarification exercise, everybody who really doesn't like people to tell you what to do, go to that end of the room. We don't even wait to hear the other end. You and I are over here. It's like, so the idea, it just occurred to me, it's okay. So if I'm the one getting help from you about how to have that communication with that person, and go like, rather than latch on to how I have already figured that out for myself, like you said, like to me, I have a process I went through that a friend of mine helped me with, which is about, well, this is about me actually choosing this because of my connection to community. And this is what I learned about how I'm not infecting other people and all this other stuff. But don't go there immediately.
Yeah.
Stop, slow down. Oh, so I mean, what would happen in the conversation if, and probably that's how they did it as journalists, is to be able to go, they didn't judge it, they just listened to it. Yeah. They go, oh, okay. Yeah. So, or we could even have that conversation and agree, go like, well, that's an interesting point, because I certainly don't like people to tell me what to do either. Yeah. And then we have a connection. Whereas we're talking about coming through, I mean, human beings make this mistake all the damn time. This part didn't just happen in the last 4 years, but it's been accentuated, and is where we have jumped so quickly to the, I'm smart, you're wrong. And we have to find a way to have conversation inside of that.
Yes. Very important.
And it's about, so one of the things I'm going to dog ear for future reference as we're talking about that is, so one of the things I'm just going to call that listening for values. Yeah. Because and
that's what I was able to hear. I mean, it really was, I thought it really was informative for me to sit and understand that, look, and when I saw the vote and as it was explored in the different communities, it did seem to follow that kind of pattern. Mm-hmm. Is that for them, making America great means keeping our independence. Mm-hmm. That's what the Trump slogan meant for so many folks. Mm-hmm. And I know that's a continuum. For other people, it meant certain other things, But for a lot of people in America, it meant that keeping my independence. I don't want to lose that. That's the fear of this socialism, right? Is that we're going to all be put into the same pot, and we're going to lose our individuality, and we're all going to be treated, as one. Right?
No, that's exactly right. So that's I'm still making notes. The rather than have the debate yes or no about who's right, who's wrong, to say, okay, let's listen and talk about the fear of socialism. It's like, because immediately, I mean, you and I probably be just preaching to each other's choirs, but it's like, damn it, you work with fear all the time. I wrote a damn book about fear. If I can't see this is a confrontation to me. If I can't see the word fear in that and realize this is there, not only is everybody not the same. When you talk about fear of somebody telling you what to do, what do we also know? Well, and I'm not saying everybody in the world has to become the therapist, but it's like, we also know we don't know that person's story. Right. It's like, if basically maintaining some independence and not being told what to do and to control and stuff like that is really a big deal to somebody, well, we got a little bit of information about them, and we need to respect that.
Or somebody that hasn't been seen and wants to be seen, and somebody to finally say you're important. If someone doesn't feel important in their life and somebody's coming along and say, no, wait a minute, you are important. What you want is important. See, I mean, that in itself can be such a powerful thing in terms of motivating someone, in terms of reaching someone. You and I know, I mean, it's very interesting because, I was into the men's movement, the so-called men's movement.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very interesting that one of my, favorite people in this world, I don't know if he's still alive or not. I think he's not, but maybe you could look this up, Patrick, while we're talking.
He's already looking it up.
His name is Robert Bly.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So Robert Bly, one of the greatest American poets of all time.
Oh yeah.
And
Iron John.
I was at a workshop with him, and he was talking about, listen, why hasn't the men's movement gotten the same traction that the women's movement has gotten?
Mm-hmm.
And what he said is because when you got women together, they were mad about being oppressed. They were mad about the number that was done. So they got angry. You can mobilize angry people. But when you get men together and get them talking, they cry.
Mm-hmm.
We don't get angry. We go into our pain.
Right.
And he says, you can't get 1,000 men marching that are crying. They just want to sit down. They want a box of tissues next to them, and they want to grieve. And that when you start to dig into the men's issues for men, there's so much grief, so much loss that they're suffering. But for women, that loss turned into anger.
It's right. This is, like you said, generalizing too. But all feelings being, this is one of the things I teach people a lot of times. It's like all feelings are some people will say, like, well, the genuine feeling. No, all feelings are genuine, but it's sort of like being right-handed or left-handed. We tend to have different, we're more comfortable and more natural with certain feelings. Now, this is the generalization. With men, being angry is a comfortable place.
That's right.
Okay? And so what do we find? If I have somebody who's just pissed off about everything, when we first were doing this experiential therapy back in the 80s, it's like, I love those people because I could get them beaten on the pillows and stuff like that. It's like, then I realized those people are the people who don't need to be beaten on the pillows. No, take the fucking bat away from that guy. It's like, yeah, wrap something around him. We used to do corn dog. We called it corn dog therapy. We'd get these quilts and wrap people up, hold them real tight, and they would sit there. They'd sit there and go, and then they just start crying. It's like, and with women, but of course they grow up in a world and less so these days, but still there. The oppression whereas it's not okay for women, women, if they're angry, they're bitches, that kind of thing. It's like, and so what happens when they get below the hurt and the pain is they have that, so I call it the Popeye stance. I've stood all I can stand and I can't stand no more. I'd been to a couple of Bly workshops. I'd never heard that I'd love that.
Isn't it a great thing?
Explanation.
It's hard to mobilize us. We just want to sit in a group and cry.
Oh, it makes me want to be in a big parade where we're all just crying though.
But look, it goes what John Lewis called good trouble.
Yes.
Good trouble is the trouble that comes out of being angry and saying enough is enough. I've had enough of this stuff. I'm not going to take it anymore. I'm going to protest peacefully,
and you do it ethically, because that's the thing about who was it, Clyburn that had that had endorsed Biden and kind of turned it around. Yeah, he was talking about John Lewis last night or whenever that was. When was it? Last night? I can't remember. Whenever Biden.
Yeah.
It's
like, think about what Clyburn did in this. That it was what Clyburn's turned this whole thing around and brought Biden into a possibility, into a position of viability as a candidate for presidency.
Oh, you talking about a ripple effect? Yeah.
Oh, somebody was, I think Don Lemon was interviewing him last night and says, I want to recognize what you just did right here, because you saved Joe Biden's bid for presidency by what you had done.
Yep. Oh, he did. He saved. I could make the argument he might have saved all of our asses. No, I think we can say that, because I don't think that if we had
a candidate that was far left, that it was the country's ready for that kind of a consciousness.
Right. I think, well, and I like part of the healing too. I think that Joe Biden has described himself from the beginning as wanting to be a president of transition, that he understands, right. Here's what I'll ask that is this is the last, I always say Joe Biden is us old white guys amends. This is our amends. It's like we really, we blew it. He's like, we screwed up a lot of things, but it's like, and but I like that he sees himself as doing the handoff, to the next generations. Right, and it's like
he's gonna run his quarter mile and then hand the baton off.
Yeah, and bottom line, this is the last old white guy that's going to be president for a long, long time.
You're right.
Because that's not who's going to make up the United States of America.
Patrick's over there thinking, I'm glad I'm a young white guy, not one of you old guys. So that
no kidding. Yeah.
Well, you do things too, Patrick, in your life. Your generation will do your fair share of screwing up stuff. So quit judging us old guys. Jeez, come on.
There's a lot to do. I gotta be ready for whatever comes down the pipe.
How are you feeling about this whole thing, Patrick? What does it all mean to
you? We're very divided, and it's going to take, bringing something material to the table that can transcend the tribal differences that the two sides of both halves of America have to heal to the extent that healing is possible. And I hope that it's possible because I think it's the only way forward. But I feel very positive about the outcome on election day, and it was really like 3 days of election day, what I've heard so far makes me feel positive, and I think listening for values, what you guys mentioned about just before jumping into any conversation and imposing my own value set on it, and trying to just trying to kind of clap a judgment on somebody with like a philosophical difference. The only way to get to a place where the philosophies join is to first acknowledge the other person's point of view. And I think just bringing the temperature down in general on all of these fractures is a really good recipe for something better happening, because the engine that has been powering the previous administration, what powers that engine is just inciting fear, inciting anger, pouring gasoline on, fires that existed before. But, without that, and without that constant, high temperature, the last 4 years wouldn't have been possible. And now that we have a changing of the guard, maybe we can kind of spin things off in a more positive direction. So that's my feeling about all this.
Well, two things, Patrick. One is, I know just from our exchanges through text and email and stuff like that, and some of our conversations here, that I know that you have. I mean, I just really respect that you've been very tuned into this and very concerned, and I every time you speak about it, I listen carefully and feel like I learned something. So as to the degree that part of what our ongoing conversation here on the podcast is about this healing, I really welcome you to just feel free to interrupt Allen anytime you want to. Me too.
Tom, anytime you want to, you get to do the same
no,
thing.
you be a part of this conversation, because and I want to say that to you, Patrick. That includes and that includes being able to, if one of us is saying something that you think we're missing a point, I really want to hear it. It's like that, because for one thing, if where we can have some differences, Alan and I have had some experience with having differences in public before. It's like it's like sometimes there's a real value to that, and it's like so.
Well, I think I really appreciate that, and I think that we need all the positive energy we can get to, power us forward into all the things that we need to do in the time ahead. And, whatever anybody's misgivings across the spectrum of the events of the last few days, I think it is an opportunity to, reframe and to, just to kind of take a positive boost from,
But let me build on this, Patrick, because it's very interesting as a family therapist, and I'm sure you've seen this too, Tom. We come into a family and there can be a real split, a very big split in the difference between parents in terms of what's best. One parent might say, this is the way that we need to deal with this situation with our children or with our family. And the other parent can be 180 degrees off, totally polarized. And then they start to quibble and fight and struggle. And that struggle, as Tom and I have seen, creates so much trouble for the whole family because of, like we've seen in our culture, right? It's in some way, it's just an example of that same process. And it is so powerful when I sit there and I look to both parents and I say, God, you guys, I really see, what the problem is. And they look at me, what do you mean? I says, the problem isn't your differences. You're going to have differences. That's a natural thing. The problem is you're not recognizing that you're both concerned about the same thing. And they look at me and say, what the hell are you talking about? I says, you both want what's best for this family. You are both very upset because you see things going on that are either a threat or whatever to this family. And you forget that you don't talk to each other from that place. Like, honey, I see that you're concerned about the family and I'm concerned. We're both concerned about the family. We're thinking about it very differently. But the thing that unites us is that we are both concerned about our family. Yep. And if we could somehow see this in terms of our country, those other folks out there don't want America to go down the tubes. They want America to be the best. Yeah. You want America to be the best it can be. I want America. I have some very different ideas maybe than some other people about what that looks like. But that doesn't mean we're different on what I will call the superordinate issue.
Right.
And I want America to be great because I believe it can because of who we are.
Well, and I continue to be amazed, even though I've been thinking in these terms for years now and writing about this and talking about this, is how the stuff that we do in our therapy rooms applies to the whole world, global, all communication, all relationship. But I love just the idea that these little light bulbs come on when I find little specific pieces, and we find that we do have similarities in how we approach clients. And I call those points of agreement. I say first thing I'm listening for is points of agreement, things you agree about. And I said, I even give the example of I don't care if the only point of agreement you have is this fucking sucks and we both want it to be better. It's like, all right, that's a starting place. It's like, but you're also, everything you're talking about now is also challenging us to let go of assumptions. See, and that's such a big piece of this, and to be able to. And the other thing is, one of the things, if we talk about, we'll move into content I will just for a second, is when we talk about wanting the nation to be good, one of the things that I think is not an uncommon belief is that I have, which is that I grew up understanding that democracy is a place where differences not only coexist, but actually help it work. They're essential. Like, one of the problems I see is anybody who gets into an attitude that one party should rule, one group should be the ones who are in charge. It's like, no, it's the collaboration. That's where the healing is.
So true. So true. And
this is positive. This is that, we've talked about all the time. I started writing about positive opportunism after 9/11. The idea of, and you were talking about go back all the way back to any of us, and example of Joe Biden being a wounded healer as opposed to just wounded. It's people who become, any of us who use this stuff for good. We practice positive opportunism. We stop regretting what has happened. We stop being stuck in that and say, okay, how can I use this situation to become better? And how can we use this situation to become better? And the truth is, very often, that's when if you ask us, if we look at our histories and you say, okay, well, if you could go back in time when you said this thing was really horrible, would you change it? Very often what we'll say is no. And the reason is because without that, I wouldn't be here. It's like without that. So, and sometimes we know this about human beings. Sometimes we need really something big to happen to get our attention. And hopefully we are wide awake right now.
Yeah, we are. I am. I know.
I am.
We are. Well, this has been great, Tom. This is
going to fit. We can continue this and talk about not taking things personally, and it's all blended in.
Which I'm excited to do, because that's an important thing in terms of being able to keep our emotional center of gravity over our own 2 feet.
Yep.
All right, Tom, how do they find out about your work?
I'm at tomrutledge.com, and you can see information about my books. You can actually find the free download. That's therapy for politics is one of the pages that's on there. There's several different things there, including a couple of articles by our friend John Amadeo.
Which is our last guest, right?
Yep. He's
that was a phenomenal show.
Oh, I love that. It's like we definitely have to have him back sometime. It's so that's all there. Free downloads, all that kind of stuff. But and mainly, I always say contact. Is also contact. So if you have comments about what we're talking about and want us to know about it, it's like I'd love to hear from you.
You can learn about me at tomrutledge.com.
You can learn some about you. I have things on my website about you.
You can learn something about me on my website, abphd.com. And there's events coming up that we have and that I have, and free stuff just like Tom has, and bookstore and all kinds of goodies. Mm-hmm. So we'll see you next week. And till then, don't take anything personally. And if you do, pay attention to it, because we're going to help you figure that out on how not to do that next week.
Amen. Peace.
Keeping your heart, start right here. That's where it starts.